Hey, welcome to ActionCast. Hiring is always challenging, but hiring for key positions within your agency can honestly be the most challenging hiring that we have. So today, that's the conversation we're going to have here in ActionCast. Welcome, welcome. My name is Katie, and I'm the community manager here at Home Care Ops. And today we are joined by Nicole, who probably many of you know, I'm sure, and a lot of you have talked to at this point. Nicole is changing home care in her own way, which she has always done, and we appreciate that. That is what makes her very strong as a owner operator. But today, specifically, we are going to talk about hiring for different administration positions. And first, I want to introduce you. Hello, Nicole, and welcome to the ActionCast.
Hello, thanks for having me again. I always love being here and chatting about all things, so I'm excited.
Well, you're one of those people that, and we're blessed. I get to be around home care owners all the time. But Nicole is the one person in the room who must be secretly 150 years old, because I can say, I've heard about this care model or this, and she'll say something like, oh, I did that, or we're doing that over in this facility, or we're doing, and I'm like, how do you have time? How have you functionally been able to do? That's the visionary in her. And I'm sure, knowing Nicole, she'll talk about this a lot, but it's the visionary in you. You go where no man has gone before. And I appreciate that in home care. But today's topic is hiring, and specifically hiring administration, office staff, those non-caregiver roles in your agency. And in dealing with home care owners in our own private home care coaching group, which she's a coach in our home care coaching group. So like, if I say that, when I say us, I'm literally mean me and Nicole, and along with other talented individuals. But we do that. And so we have these conversations all the time. And one of the challenges I feel like that comes up is home care owners have had to spend a bulk of their time hiring caregivers, and their first hires are always caregivers. That's the position that they're most in tune with. Oftentimes they come up through the ranks as a caregiver. They're very in tune with that position. But when it comes to hiring office and admin staff, that's a different beast. Whereas you may need to hire so many caregivers, there's one position, and that is a pivotal position that's going to affect everybody in your agency. Everybody is affected by who the scheduler is. Mm-hmm. And if you're a huge agency, you only have a relatively small amount of schedulers and people that deal with these. So first, let's talk about what is the difference and what is some healthy wisdom for an owner that is hiring those particular types of positions.
So I think the first and main point, and one of the things that we talk about a lot in Action Leaders, and one of the things that I kind of primarily focus a lot of my conversations, especially leadership conversations, around, is understanding the type of person you have in front of you and what the positional needs are. So we talk a lot about operator versus visionary versus somebody who is a hybrid personality and leadership style, and understanding that not only do people have those personality and leadership styles, different roles require different styles of leadership. And that also plays into why we hire a lot of caregivers in home care. We also know that there is a huge turnover rate in home care because we look at every single position the same in home care. It's a caregiving job without taking into consideration the different needs and the different aspects. And so your admin roles are really no different. You want to make sure that you're not sticking a square peg in a round hole, and understand the people that you're interviewing and hiring, and knowing, are they an operator? Are they a visionary? Are they somebody that can function within both roles? And then also, what is the role? Are you just completely intrigued with somebody who is sitting in front of you and they're very operator based, but the role that you're hiring for really requires somebody that's more visionary, more big picture? Those two things have to go hand in hand. So you have to understand the type of leadership style that this person possesses, as well as the type of personality and leadership style that this role requires within your agency. Because if you're not matching those two things together, you're really not setting that person up for success, and you're really not setting your agency up for success. So I would say to bring that all together is understanding that knowing your personality and leadership style is only half of the puzzle. The other half is really understanding what this role really requires out of that person, and knowing if it's a visionary role or an operator role that it needs to be filled with.
That's awesome. And kind of as a follow-up to that, you do coach so many home care owners, and you do, we have, you can't talk about, well, we have a lot of systems. We have, our SOS system. We have different things where you do even on the ground stuff and stuff for home care owners. And do you think the challenge is that they are kind of unwilling to go out of their box of what, or unable, maybe unwilling is strong, but maybe unable to go out of their box of like what that hire looks like, a home care hire looks like? Or is it that maybe they themselves don't understand the needs of those positions? Like where does that fall?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, actually. Because once I am talking and coaching owners on what these things actually are, it's not that they don't understand it. It's just that sometimes it's hard to change established patterns and understand, because a job or a position is kind of an inanimate, untangible thing. So we don't think about, we need to assess this role and identify what this role really is going to entail. So like in my agency, we have, a lot of different agencies use personality assessments, and we have an assessment that establishes if somebody is more visionary or more operator based, or if they're a hybrid. But we also use an assessment tool that I created that determines if this role is a visionary or an operator based, or somebody, it's going to require somebody that is more in a hybrid that can do either or. So we actually assess the position first to identify what type of person we need to hire. And then we actually have job descriptions created for a visionary or an operator, and those are the job ads that we put out. And so we do that with our admins. We do that with our field staff as well. And when we go and do an intake for a client, we're assessing if the care or the service itself is going to be better matched with somebody that is visionary or an operator. And we do that through an assessment tool on the job itself that they're going to be doing when they're in the home. And so, not to brag, but we have a 93% retention rate in our agency, because we're matching by skill set, but we're also matching by style of leadership and personality traits and where they're going to function best. So we do that for every single position and every single role in my agency that we hire, whether it's an admin position or somebody that's working in the field. And I think as home care owners, as I'm working with them, first, it's about not really understanding what we're talking about when we're saying visionary versus operator. Once they get the concept, it is a step outside of their comfort zone to really look at these things through that lens. And I don't think it's that they don't want to. I think it just takes a little bit of time to kind of make that shift and that mindset shift that we talk about a lot, to really kind of, one, understand how to look at an inanimate thing like a position as a visionary or an operator type job, and then slowly kind of start to put those pieces into play. But when they do, it makes all the difference in the world, and you're able to build a far more solid leadership team a lot faster because you are putting the right people in the right roles from the beginning and not having to do assessments or restructuring because your team isn't meeting the expectation. And that's what I hear from owners a lot is, I have a really great team, but they don't do things without me having to hang over them and say, you're not getting me this, you're not getting me this. And the question I always ask them is, do you feel like you have the right people in the right roles? And most of the time they say no, if I really think about it. And I'm like, okay, well, perfect. That's where we start. But if we can learn to do that from the very beginning, there's a lot less restructuring, reorganizing, reassessing 6, 9, 12 months into somebody being in a role. If you get somebody that stays in the wrong role that long, you're pretty lucky.
That's awesome. And as you were saying that, there was a owner call that I was on and just listening in. It's probably been a year or so ago now, but we had an owner that was stalled at, I think, like not over 2 million, like 1.8, 1. Like it was in that, the $2 million stall that they get in. And so we were trying to talk through it. And so we got on the conversation of office admin and how they're hiring and we asked her, we're like, well, what is your process for hiring? And she was still doing, most of the hiring, especially for those roles and stuff. And I remember, I think it was Jessica talking to her, said, well, are you taking, the personalities into perspective? Are you taking like their traits, their strengths into what the role actually needs? She was basically, coaching in the same way you are now. And the owner said, well, that is important. And Jessica said, well, what's the most important? And the owner replied, well, my most important thing is I just want to hire people that can get along because we've had a lot of trouble with fighting. Mm-hmm. And because of like a trauma experience in their past where they had a situation blow up on them, they had adapted their hiring to hiring people they thought would get along with each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, man, like we got to work on that. Mm-hmm. But that's, and it's crazy how you think you've reached a level in business and maybe you've pushed past that, but you might have those mental obstacles of subconsciously trying to hire mini me's or hiring people that you feel are friendly or, and I mean, obviously we all need to be able to interact socially and we all need to be able to, put our best foot forward. But like having that as a main focus, that destroys looking at what this person goes for this role. And is that going to be a marriage that works together?
Mm-hmm. And yeah. And it's important too, because there are some roles and there are some roles when you start assessing them. So like for myself, when I was looking to start exiting daily operations, I was exiting daily operations from multiple positions at once. So I was exiting as the CEO of my home care adult day program and also transitioning out of working as an administrator in my assisted living because I was filling a hole while we were adjusting positions. And in some instances, and looking at the job on what it really needed, so the admin role really did need somebody who was just like me because it was a role that required somebody who had this hybrid capacity to be able to go in and do the task-based things that needed to be done on a repeatable system, but then also needed to be able to shift in real time and go down to the floor and do training and education. But then I also had to be really honest with myself in that I wasn't a good CEO of my company. And the reason behind that is I'm not an operator. I can operate, but I don't love to. I don't like to cross off task lists every day. And that's really when we talk about a CEO, you need somebody who is 100% operator based that can go in, can develop the tasks, can complete them, and not even just complete them, but execute them with precision and get reward from doing that. And that is not me. And so understanding that these roles almost have their own required personality and leadership style, and realizing that I needed somebody who was the exact opposite of me, and I needed somebody in a different role who was exactly like I was, but it could not be another team of a bunch of little mini-me's because I wasn't a great CEO. I was a really
Right.
good administrator, but I
Right.
really kind of sucked at being a CEO. So understanding that you can't, the getting along is a culture thing, right? Like
Mhm.
that's culture. That's what we talk about, that buzzword. And that culture comes from us as the owner and who you put in what
Right.
roles. It can't just be I'm going to hire people because I want them to get along and have the same belief structure and
Yeah.
do the things that I enjoy doing. And because you're hiring a bunch of friends at that point, right? And that's not going to benefit your business. That's going to at some point really handicap your business.
Right. And at some point, that itself will be your biggest obstacle
Yeah.
is that, like that whole, we've all seen that, is that building in hiring friends is never a good idea. In
No,
general, it
no.
doesn't work. And so, um, that is one of the biggest challenge. So let's move on a little bit and let's talk about real time, like tools that an owner from this conversation, they're seeing, okay, geez, I need to like get this. All these conversations, I always think of that owner that's looking at it and think, man, I don't have any structure in place for this. This is, this isn't, I just need to call my recruiter and say, hey, let's look at this. Like sometimes you're going to get owners who really haven't thought about, they've just thought about hiring the right person from the job, but they've thought about it in such a generic sense that, they just hire somebody that's done it for five. If a lot of times if a position requires you to have an insane amount of experience, that means they're not wanting to hire to train you. That's what that
Mhm,
means. Like,
mhm.
like that's what that whole requirement means. I don't want to have, and I'm trusting the training of somebody I've never met and
Yeah.
in a company that has no investment in me and my agency. So what about that owner that from what is the basic tools first? How do they find out what a job, because I think, okay, marketing, and somebody asked me what a marketer does, I might just say, well, they need to be able to talk to people and make sales. And, in my mind, that might be what it is, but there's actually a type of personality and a type of person that excels in that role. And that is extremely different than a scheduler. Like nobody is a cross marketer scheduler. And if they are, one is really struggling. And um, so talk about that. What are the basic foundational tenets to start working on identifying what a position requires and what personalities work best in that position?
Yeah. So looking at specifically in the home care industry, what immediately kind of comes to mind is the primary roles that we have in our different home care agencies. So we have our CEO. We may have a marketer or community engagement specialist. We probably have a director of operations and a care coordinator. And you may even have, obviously, you have a scheduler. Those are kind of those 5 core principals positions in an agency. So when we're talking about like our CEO, we need somebody who's really honestly probably more of a hybrid, but tends to function better in an operator role because they have to be able to think big picture and be able to look at future impacts for sure. But day-to-day stuff with a CEO role is a lot of task-based operation type things. Whereas like your marketer, your community engagement person, you really want somebody who is a visionary. And I always compare when I'm working with home care owners, I always compare them to my marketing or my community engagement individual. She is phenomenal. She's amazing. She has beautiful, great big ideas. She is more of a visionary than I am. I tell her, you are 150% visionary. And this is nothing that she's going to watch and feel like I'm talking negatively about her, but her organizational skills suck. And so that position, it requires somebody who can go out and pivot and adjust and change things on a dime and be able to go in and walk into a room and read the room and understand who she needs to present as in that moment based on who's in the room. So lots of confidence, lots of self-assurance, and can just on a whim have a conversation with anybody. That's very visionary. And then I think of like my director of operations, who is now my CEO. When she was in that director of operations role, she is very task based. There's not necessarily a lot of thought into 6 months from now or a year from now. She's focused on right now, what's going on, what does she need to focus on to make things run smoother and our operations better, while making sure that all of the boxes and the tasks are being completed in the team around her. And she really did excel in that role. And she's now transitioned into our CEO. But same thing, when we were looking at hiring and replacing her, I knew that needed to be an operator, because somebody who was a visionary would fail as a director of operations. So you really kind of want that director of ops position to be somebody who is very task-based, who's very operator-based. Same thing. And yes and no, when we talk a schedule, you really need somebody with a hybrid capacity when you're talking a scheduler, because it's repetition, but it's also that big picture. If you're looking at adjusting a schedule because you've got a call off, there's got to be that ability to focus and see big picture. Where can I move this visit? How can this person see this one? And then maybe also go next week and make up those hours somewhere. So you really need that hybrid person when you're talking about a scheduler. If you've got a biller, a biller or an invoicer, or somebody who's doing your payroll stuff, your HR stuff, that really, again, is going to be somebody who's pretty operator based, and really functions and thrives in that task-based type role.
That's awesome. And that's true across all industries. My husband is the director of operations, or was a director of operations at a drug and alcohol rehab facility. So very different, but he was the director of operations, and he is so operator mindset is crazy. Like, he will tell me when I'm stirring my coffee, if I put the spoon on a different counter than I usually do, he'll be like, I prefer the spoon over here. And I'm thinking, what the heck does it matter where the spoon is? But in his operator mind, that's a pattern. You do it every morning, and it's important for that to be. And I'll hear him, like, I can hear him in other parts of the house. If I've put the spoon down in the wrong place, he'll go, ugh, in the kitchen. And I'm like, what? but it's because he's so operator based. And that's so true. And that's why, and he excels in that position, like, that's his thing. And so it's so true. And you're only benefiting the people too, if you put them in positions that's strong, because a lot of us are capable of things that we don't derive our passion and our purpose out of.
Yes.
I can be really good at washing dishes. I get zero passion, purpose, and enjoyment out of that, but I can do it functionally. I have learned a skill, and I can do it. So that's true. Okay. So what is this as a follow-up to that? How about in a caregiving mindset? Like, let's switch it. Can this be like, this is all pretty much admin. This is very much admin focused, but is there an adaptability quotient in caregivers? Because that is a large part of our staff. And at the end of the day, usually that's our biggest headache, one way or the other. So is there a way to make this applicable to caregiving?
100%. So what we do in our agency is, we go out, we do our assessment or our intake visit, we meet the client, we do our safety checks, just like every other agency does. What we come back and do after the intake, though, I think is what we do a little bit differently. So one, we also understand the leadership style of all of our staff. All of our staff do these visionary versus operator assessments, and those go in their personnel files. When we go to a client's home, we look at what is going to be required of our staff while they're in the home. Is this a companionship type home where they're just kind of like hanging out, making sure grandma's safe, making sure grandma has food cooked for her for the day? Or is this a higher acuity, more specific, needs hands-on care, has a routine, has maybe a dementia? All of those things play into, and immediately I think of a client that I've had since we opened. So that individual's care looks the exact same every single day. He's a quadriplegic. He has a built-in Hoyer track. He has to have the same exact care every single day. So somebody that we are going to put in that home needs to be very operator based, because they have to be able to go in and do the same thing for that
Right.
individual every single day, and he gets seen 7 days a week for 8 hours a day. So it has to be somebody who is comfortable and gets reward from repetition and being able to go in and successfully do the same things over and over every day. There are other clients that are dementia clients. We have to have somebody who is a visionary mindset that can go in and be successful with our dementia clientele, because it's all about big picture, right? Like,
Right.
they need to be able to have a standard structured day, but that person has to be able to big picture and pivot and adjust based on how the disease presents that day. So that person has to, if not be a hybrid, they have to at least be a visionary person to understand big picture. This is the disease. I can't take this personally, and I'm not completing my tasks and what I need to do because the disease is getting in the way. So those two types of service, or those two types of care, require very different types of people and different mindsets. So after that intake, and we know what we're working with in that home, we then address staff that have more of an operator or a visionary type mindset on taking that client assignment. And if we don't have somebody, then we actually will put an ad out that is built more for a visionary or built more for an operator, because depending on that situation, we want to hire the right person for the role. The skill set to do all the care is going to be there, but we have to make sure that they're going to get reward in what they're doing every day. So we have a different job ad based on which personality or which style that person tends to fall more within.
That's awesome. And I will say, for everybody watching this, that was amazing. And this is from a person who has a 93% retention rate. When you hear wisdom, like, this is worth rewatching. This is worth telling someone about, because this is the secret ingredient X that people get really frustrated and are trying their best, but your best without a skill set to pursue it is, we a hashtag we use all the time around here is keep taking action, but more defined, it's keep taking intentional action.
Yes.
Because a tornado is action, but that doesn't mean that it's working towards a positive goal.
Right.
It's their action requires intentionality behind it in order to really get your best effort. So to kind of land the plane, I'm going to like group a little cluster of things that maybe, and I will say, if you have a question about this, put it in the comments. Like, both of us are very active on the page. We're very active in our groups. Put it in the comment and we will absolutely try and answer you, try and connect and make sure you're well served. Because we do this because we want home care owners to grow wherever they're at. This isn't, we go out of our way not to have secret formulas that only we know about, or this or that. This is to help home care as an industry and home care owners individually. So I will say that, to kind of land the plane on it, give me an overview of when you instituted in your agency, and is it one of those things that is a daily conversation piece? Like you're talking about, we would put an operator here, we would put visionary there. How throughout your staff is that? Is there just like a certain group of people, you and the scheduler know this, you and the operator know this, or like how much does that permeate the culture of your office, I would say, and maybe even the ripple effect out to the caregivers? But how much of that is within your agency? And in general, you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, she always has something new. Next week, she'll have started, a retired cat farm in Singapore, and I won't have realized it. And but you currently have a very large home care agency, traditional home care agency. You have an adult daycare program, and you have an assisted living facility. And so and they have specialties within those. So of all those, how much would you say this particular action of how to hire people, understanding the importance of placement, how has that affected your business and your ability to grow and scale?
Yeah, so we started, I'm trying to get better at saying I and not we, when it really was I, and we only when it was we as a team. So I started really kind of paying attention to this and putting a lot of intentional effort into focusing on this about 3 years ago. And when I started understanding the difference in leadership style and personality style. Because I love psyches, I love how the brain works and all of that stuff. I started being intentional and paying attention and tracking different things. So about 3 years ago is when I started just kind of like, I'm going to just pay attention to this a little bit closer than I have in the past and see if it makes a difference. And then about 2 years ago, I really started making it an open topic of conversation. And now it's a regular part of conversation in all of my offices. Somebody will do something in the office and we'll be like, oh, that's a visionary statement, or that's a real operator thing to do. And so it is very commonplace conversation in all of my agencies. And the majority of our staff understand, because we make intentional time to educate on this. And we will have caregivers that will go into a home and maybe it's not a good fit. Maybe it's more operator based than really what they want. They can do operator stuff, but they'll say, I don't know that I want to be here 5 days a week. I don't mind being a fill-in, but this is just too much operator for me. I would prefer something a little more visionary, where I have the ability to kind of adjust and change the structure of the day if we get bored. And the same thing rings true in the assisted living. That's kind of the principal philosophy of our adult day program. So that is like ingrained in that culture. But even in the assisted living, we need a lot more visionary people, because we serve primarily a dementia clientele. We have a memory care home. And so everybody that lives there, it requires that they have a dementia diagnosis. So we have to have that more hybrid personality and mindset in people that work in the assisted living, because they have to be able to, one, recognize the disease, and they have to be able to mend and mold with multiple other personality types in our residents. So it's a very widespread, common topic of conversation in all of my businesses. And I think that it's a way that the staff see that we are invested in a lot more than just them showing up to their shift and clocking in and clocking out. It's a way that we can show that we are invested in them and making sure that they are satisfied in and rewarded in what they're doing every day. And I think that it shows in the fact that we do have a 93% retention rate in the agencies. So, there's something there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We all are good at talking, but talking only does so much. It's actually when you're able to say, here, this is what we're doing. And that's what you provide for us. And I really appreciate you giving generously of your hard-earned wisdom. This did not come without a cost. You had to invest in doing this. You had to invest in making your agency better. And then now generously, you make the agencies of our coaching clients better, but then also even the wider audience. And I know that you often open up your Fridays to just chats with people. I will say, if you put the word hiring in the comments, and Nicole will DM you. She's crazy like that. She will do all the things. She's busy all the time, but we'll send you a message so that you can connect with Nicole and have that 15-minute quick action call. That is absolutely, if there's something that we can help you with at Home Care Ops, reach out to us in the comments. That's what we're here for. I want to thank you for this conversation. This conversation changes agencies, and that's what we're here for, to see the industry grow at large. Make sure to join in every Friday here on ActionCast.